Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all the participants of the training course Beyond Museums. I'm really glad to have you here again in the new year in 2022. And let me wish you a very happy new year and a very fruitful and hopefully better new year. And thank you for being with us. We are starting with the very last phase of our training course, which is the January phase with the last 3 webinars. We closed our appointment, our course for 2021 with some examples and experiences shared by 2 of the museums of the global network of water museums, namely the Eco-Museum of Martesana, with the voice of Edo Brichetti, sharing with us their experiences with the community, and also with the Museum of Sciences of Trento, with all the didactic activities that they are carrying on. So today we are going to start this new phase of the course with other kind of experiences, with other research projects and research lines, and also hopefully insightful proposals for you to reflect on the role of water heritage and sustainable development, and your task with the museums and with your research. We will start today with dealing with psychopaths and their role in sustainable development in fragile territories. And so I'm really glad to give the floor to Professor Paolo Pileri, which I'm also really glad to introduce. Professor Pileri is Professor of Urban Planning and Design at Politecnico of Milano in Italy. His research focuses on deep ecology and sustainability on 3 axes. The first one is soil in urban planning and zero land consumption. The second one is the design of slowness by the way of long tourism walking and cycling routes to regenerate and enhance territories. And the third one is qualifying urban public spaces in front of school. Paolo Pileri is author of more than 350 publications, and he is columnist for the magazine Altra Economia, Other Economy, and he is advisor for the Italian Ministry of Infrastructures and Mobility. Professor Pileri, which I'm really glad to thank for being with us today, will speak about designing cycle paths to empower sustainability into fragile territories, the case of VENTO. So Professor Pileri, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for the introduction, and welcome to everybody. I'm very glad to have invited for this lesson, and now I try to share my screen to you. So to start with my lesson. Okay. It's okay? Is it okay?
Yes,
okay,
perfect.
Wonderful. The title, you have already listened the title, so I introduce you the project VENTO, starting from the geography of where the project is based. And the picture that you see on the top is the northern part of Italy, the Pianura Padana, one of the most important agricultural plain in the world, because it's very fertile, okay? And because it's a sort of place where all the river from the Alps and from the Apennine, so the Alps are the mountains and in the north part, and the Apennine are the mountains in the south part of the plain, all the water come there. And in the middle, there is a river, the most important river in Italy. The name is Po River. Okay, so a dozen years ago, we imagined to draw a line, to draw an infrastructure for pedaling in the middle of this landscape, and we choose to to design this line from Turin to Venice, and this is the reason of the name Vento, because Vento is exactly Venice, Ven, and Turin, to, Vento. But it's important to note that the name Vento in English, if I translate Vento in English, means wind, something that is soft pleasure, that remind us pleasure, or remind us something that is attractive and interesting. So in this moment, Vento is a cycling tourism route, is not yet realized. The length is more than 700 kilometers. It will be safe, continuous, interconnected with the other bicycle and walking path that we have there. And the work was introduced by the Politecnico of Milano, because we 10 years ago, a dozen years ago, proposed this kind of infrastructure to the government, and no one in these regions tried to propose a sort of line like this. So at the moment, the project has been under construction by the Italian government, and I hope that at the end of 2023 will be completely open to everybody. Okay, but what's important is not to fix our attention on bike, but on what the bike can produce in the landscape and in the connection between people and the water landscape. This is important for me and for us, I think, because our purpose is to imagine something, as I can say, a new green energy, to let people explore the wonderful Italian landscapes, as I wrote. Landscapes that are far from most known and iconic ones, because in Italy we have Venice, we have Milano, Rome, Florence, and our idea of tourism, our idea of spending time is to go there. Okay, instead we have a lot of wonderful landscapes in the inner part of Italy, in the inner part of our regions, and where nobody knows, and nobody go there. And so the idea is to implement these lines to let people of the cities go there. And so our goal is not the cycling pazzia or the cycling fashion, okay, but using the cycling tourism as a tool for starting up regenerative models for places that don't matter. So I imagine to design my lesson using 4 pillars that for us are very important for the design of Vento. And the first one is the slowness, and I try to let you understand why the slowness is so important as a pillar for our design. And then the line, the idea of the line, that is not so common in our mind. What is a line? Maybe we know what is a connection, but what is a line is less common in our mind. And then how to design a social and cultural links between landscape, heritage, water, landscape, and people. And then why there's this kind of method, this kind of idea can empower the marginal territories, the fragile territories in our landscape. So we start with the idea, the concept of slowness. First of all, we have to fix a speed limit, a limit. Under this limit, we can speak about slowness. And I think that the limit is not I think, but there are lots of authors that, for instance, Ivan Illich wrote a wonderful book, Energy and Equity in Italian, Dialogi della Bicicletta. And even Ermanno Rea was an important writer in Italy, and he made a wonderful travel from Venice to Turin using by car, but going slow. And at a certain point in his book, he wrote 20 kilometers per hour is an ideal speed as things that fall under our glance can appear to us both concrete and surprising, material and immaterial. So there is a speed that is really important for our way of watching things, seeing things. Okay. For instance, if before that scheme, I wanna give you another suggestion. In Italian, slowness, we say lentezza. And the word lentezza, in the word lentezza, you find another word that is lente. Okay, lente is the magnifier. Okay, the glass that you use to see something that your eyes can't see. And it's important for me because this means that lentezza, slowness, is the tool that permit to you to see something that if you use the speed, you don't see. So it's important for us to connect people to the landscape, use this wonderful energy, the slowness, to let people see the characteristics of the landscape. Otherwise, they would escape us. Okay. I try to explain what I'm saying using this scheme. If you choose to go fast, probably in your mind, just a few lines remain fixed. Okay, the line of the mountains or the hills, maybe the shape of the buildings, or no more than this. Okay, and then probably in your experience of speed, you remember a unique color: brown, green, gray. I don't know. Okay, no more than this. If you slow, the characteristics of the buildings, the characteristics of the trees, the characteristics of an hill, the pasture, the way of cultivation, and so on, will appear to your eyes. And it's important because these characteristics will fix in your mind, and you have an experience of the landscape, a strong experience of landscape. So indeed, we say that the slowness make it possible to have a relationships with a landscape, a good relationship with the landscape. And in this way, I think that it's a mission to design walking path, cycling paths, if we want that people learn to have relationship with the landscape. I want to say that I'm not against the speed; it's important. Okay, but I think that it's now time to invest more money, energy, and people in designing the slowness, infrastructure for the slowness, because I think that the slowness is a real right for all of us. We think that we have the right to go speed. Instead, I think that we have also the right to go slow, because, and this is an important, it's an important task for the public policies, okay, to invest in slowness. In Italy, it's not at the moment a great investment. I'm sorry, but I hope for the future. I try to write all these concepts in that book. So, because this is, I have already said, because I think that in a public policy, if you encourage people cycling or walking for hours, for days better, for weeks, okay, and many kilometers, it's sure, in my opinion, but it probably you obtain people more dedicated into their landscape, okay. And for this reason, I intended the design of cycling and walking roads as a deep ecological, sustainable, social, cultural policy, okay. I stress this concept because I don't want that you think that I'm a designer of cycling fashion or something like that. I'm a designer of landscape, okay. But we need that people go there. If you don't have infrastructure for let people go in there, it's probably we lose the landscape, because as I said before, the lesson, each of us take care what he knows, okay. If I don't know anything of our landscape, of my landscape, probably I don't fight for protect it. And then there is another reason that is very important. Try to find something that can upset the idea of economic flows. In the past, we had a lot of economic flows from the margin to the city, but we need also the vice versa, to imagine something that can flow economies from the center to the marginal areas. And so the cycle tourism, the slow tourism, that the people living in the cities begin loving, okay, can be a way, a tool to move economies from the center to the marginal areas. Now the second pillar, the line. What is a line? It's not so easy. And there is an anthropologist, a wonderful anthropologist, that is Piningold, okay, that wrote a wonderful book, Lines, the title. And the book starts with this sentence: what do walking, weaving, observing, singing, storytelling, drawing, and writing have in common? The answer is simple. The answer is that they all proceed along lines of one kind or another. If you think our lives are full of lines. When we write, we write following a line. We don't write. Our letters are putting along a line. Even when you decide to take your car and going to visit a friend of yours, you take your car and you go on a road, and the road is a line. So everything around everything, most of the things that are around us are lines. So the concept of the line is very radicated in our mind, and we move ourselves along lines. So it's for us has been important to imagine a route that was a line along another line, the line of the Po River, and a line of that can put together all the villages, all the landscapes, all the situation that were along this blue line. And so this is important because it's not in my concept, is not an infrastructure for for moving something from a point to another point, but it's an experience like writing. Okay, it's something that flows along a line. So exactly this is the sentence for us. So a cycle route is not an experience of cycling, okay, but a long line that can group together many opportunities that in this moment are completely isolated one from the other. And so one of our slogan is that a line sews up the fragmented landscapes. And this is another important concept that I want to stress to you, because in this moment, overall, in the context of touristic policies, the idea is that each region is a point and promote itself, okay, in the tourism framework. And so there is not the idea that the cooperation between regions, because they have in mind a unique landscape. Okay, no. So along the Po River, we have 4 regions, 4 different tourism promotions. We have more than 100 municipalities. Each municipalities have a own program for promoting the tourism. It's incredible. Okay, it's not good. So the idea is, imagine that there is a unique region, the water region, thanks to this line, that form a unique landscape made by different landscapes inside. Okay, but it's the line that sew together the micro landscape. In fact, one of our slogan in the past, because it was not easy to let people understand that a cycle route can be an opportunity for their economies, for their societies, for caring the landscape. So one of our slogan was "Ricuciamo la bellezza," sewing up the beauty that is scattered along the Po River and you don't see anymore. Okay. Just to finish, I want to stress that the line is quite different from the connection, because there is an important concept. If you choose the speed, you are interested in the destination. When you take the car for going to Ferrara in a short time, and you have in mind to arrive in Ferrara. You are completely not interested in what you find during your travel, okay? In fact, I say that the speed moves by points, okay, because you are in a hurry. So in the past, we designed infrastructure to connect 2 points, okay, to let you move fast from a point to another point. And in this way, your mind works thinking about points. Instead, if you choose the slowness in my idea moves by lines, because if you choose the slowness, you are completely not interested in the origin, because the origin means that you start, but you are interested in what you find during your trip, okay? And so it's not important the points, okay, capital points that you find along your route, but it's important all you find it along your route. So it's important to in my opinion, it's important to point out these two different approach of the speed and the approach of the slowness, because it means to have two different way of designing the route. Okay. Paul Klee said that a line is a point. It's a point that decided to go out for a walk. Okay, and this is important. This is help us to understand the difference between a design, a connection, a design made by connectors, and a design made by lines. Remember the sentence by Paul Klee. A point is something that is going out for a walk, forming a line. Okay, and this is very important because this helps us to understand the importance of what you find along your route. Everything is important, not just the capital cities, not just the city center that you find during your walk, but everything. A stone wall is important. Remember the Magnificat. So, for instance, in our research, we try to make some inventories of what you can find along the line. If you consider the whole line, this is the richness of the landscape, for instance, in this case of the heritage that you can find. Before of this image, people didn't use to imagine the landscape at this scale, okay? Because everybody used to see their city center, their villas, their church, no more than this. Because in their mind, there is not the idea that this wire, this line connected, grouped together in historical, in a wonderful new narrative way, all this situation. And you can do the same things for foods, for instance. Okay, if you take the line and you collect the foods that you find along the line, it's incredible, a new landscape for you. We did it in the past. We pick up all the pastas from Venice to Turin, and it's incredible because we found a lot of different ways of forming the pastas. Okay, different recipes, and in many cases the recipes, the origin of the recipes are connected with the story of that landscape. It's really the story that changes step by step from Venice to Turin, or from Turin to Venice. And if you form this landscape thanks to the line, you understand that the line is the backbone of a lot of our way of seeing the landscape. Should be. The parks, for instance, along the Po River, we have 47 parks. In this moment, they are completely isolated each other. Okay, there is no an idea that every park can be a part of a unique big park, thanks to a connection, a unique connection. So changed completely changed the way of enjoying this landscape. For instance, if when Vento will be on, a person can spend time in the park of Ticino. It is another water park in the middle of Vento, some days, and then he will able to take the bike and go to another park, following the Po River, that is a park itself. So this is something that is a unique park, okay? And the backbone could be the Vento line. Our reference in the past was to Germany, because in the Germany we found we studied many cases in Europe, and I think that one of the most interesting we found in Germany, because in Germany they decided to invest money for realizing long distance cycling routes properly. They want to. So now they have a wonderful network made by 45,000 kilometers of routes, and each one must be longer than 150 kilometers. If a proposal of cycling route is less than 150 kilometers, they don't consider a line for have an experience of landscape, an experience of travel. Okay, this is very important, because in their mind, I discovered that the idea was that to let people stay in the landscape for almost 3 nights. Incredible, because and it's right, because if you want to have a good experience of landscape, a good experience of food, a good experience of slowness, you have to habit your body, your psychological to stay there, okay, to spend time step by step, okay. It's not immediately. You live in Berlin, you live in Milano, you live in Rome, is a chaotic city. It's not easy to pass from a chaotic situation to a quiet situation. So you have to stay there almost 3 days in their mind. And it's really very important, even for the economies of that places, if you stay there 3 days, okay? Because if you stay there 3 days, you sleep there, you have food there, and you spend money there, okay, along all the small villages. If you note, 40% of this wonderful network is along the river. Not only because the landscape of the river is a wonderful landscape, but for another reason, because the river is plain. So everybody can pedal, everybody can walk along the river, because it's not each of us, there is not a steep part of the cycling route that is impossible to pedal. Everybody can have an experience. This is another important point for us, to design long cycling routes for everybody and not for lovers of the bike, okay, people that are prepared for for all the steepness. No, for everybody, it's important. Okay, the third pillar, so slowness and lines are really the first two pillars of this project and of the idea to reconnect exactly, to form new links between people and the landscape. Now in Italy, thanks to VENTO, not only, we have a program of developing a new cycling routes in Italy. You see VENTO here from Turin to Venezia, but you see also from north to south, from Verona to Firenze. A part has already been realized. The name is the cycle route of the sun. Then we have the two cycle routes along our two seas, the Tyrrhenian seas from Ventimiglia in the west part of Italy until Rome. That we have another important route on the Adriatic Sea from Trieste to Puglia. This place is Gargano, a wonderful place. Then we have another important route from the inner part in Puglia to that pass through the mountains of Basilicata and then go in the plain, in another wonderful plain in Puglia. This is the name of that project is the water cycling route, Ciclabile dell'Acqua. And then we have another one passing through Calabria and Sicilia. And the last one is the ring in the Sardinia. All these lines will be developed in the next years. Okay, at the moment they are not ready for cycling. Just some parts, but a few kilometers. But the idea, I hope, was to enforce this possibility of traveling along the internal areas of Italy. And our reference is Kevin Lynch. He says, "Give me a line to understand the words." Okay, and his way of designing the line was exactly to enforce the ability of the people passing through to see the landscape. Don't forget that all of us live in a city. We are not able to understand what is the landscape. So we as designers, we have to help people to see the different characteristics of the landscape. So it's important to design this route not thinking about the bike, okay, but thinking about the landscape. And your way of designing changed completely. Here you can see some pictures taken from VENTO. This is the Po River. For instance, there are some boat houses. Okay. There are some boat houses in some parts of the Po River that no one knows. Then, for instance, you see the agricultural plain. This is the Pioppi, poplars, okay, that are very common along the landscape of the Po River. But note, please, the bank. This is this bank that contain the river, and it's a sign of the landscape of the river. It is really very important. We decided to imagine the cycling route on the top of this bank, at the beginning was forbidden for cyclists to go there because of water reasons, or because the water department thought that it was dangerous. Is not true, and it's important for us to have decided to stay there, because if you pedal on the top of the bank, you can enjoy the landscape in another way. You dominate the landscape. Okay, you can see the landscape for many kilometers in front of you. Another perception of the landscape. So it's really important to design. At the beginning, they suggested us to stay there. Okay, not on the top, but in the lower part. And I said no, absolutely no. I said, because if you stay in the lower part, when you travel, you have a wall for kilometers, for many kilometers on your sides. Okay, and you can't see anything. If you want that people will be connected to landscape, you have to choose to stay on the top. At the end, we will stay on the top. Okay, you can see different rural landscape. For instance, this is a rice field. Okay, the rice field is full of water in June, but is a gold field in September. So it's another challenge is to invite people to pedal in different seasons, because in different seasons you have different landscapes, even for the way of using the water. This is another architecture that are very common along the Po River. This building, in this building, you find 5 pumps that pump the water from the inner part of the plain to flow the water in the Po River. This important architecture made at the beginning of the last century are spread into the Po landscape, and are very important, because without this kind of infrastructure, it is impossible to have all the fields that you see, but people doesn't know. So it's important when you pedal and you see this building to find the way to explain to the people the importance of these architectures along the water landscapes. Then you see little villages, great heritage. It's an very important place that just a few people know in Italy. The name is San Benedetto Po, Abbazia del Polirone, that Matilde di Canossa decided to build, because it was a wonderful place. VENTO part. So the experience that you can make during your travel along the line is an experience made by water, by heritage, by fields, by agriculture area, and so on. Castle, we have many castles, because in the past, in the Middle Age, the landscape of the Po River was divided by different families, different castle domination, and so on. Villas, for instance, in the part of the Veneto part of the Po River, we have the Ville Venete, okay, from Palladio, or the school of Palladio, something like that. It's incredible. I took the photo from the bank, from the top of the bank, and you see, when you pedal, you can see the whole villa. It's really amazing. Then the sea. we decided to enter in Venice not from the main entrance, the Freedom Bridge, okay, but we decided to enter in Venice from Chioggia, from the south part, then to boat to an island, the name is Pellestrina, and then to boat to another island that is Lido, where you will find a cycle path, and really very amazing, because you pedal looking the sea. If you start in Turin, you see the Alps, the mountains, and after 10 days you see the sea. Really very amazing. Then we have a landscape, food landscape. This is the rice in Piedmont. This is a typical rice. The name is panissa. Okay. Then we have a lot of micro museum along this line. In this moment, the museums are not connected to each other. Okay, unfortunately. For instance, here in Veneto, we have a little museum because in the past, this area was a district for people that used to build this kind of toys, Luna Park. And now there is a little museum. Then there is another important museum in Felonica about the Second World War. And then there is another little museum, a water museum in Piedmont. But in this moment, these museums are not connected to each other. Then we have lots of folk tradition along the Po River. These are two important characters of the Italian tradition after the Second World War, Don Camillo e Peppone. Don Camillo e Peppone were two characters, and the environment of their stories was exactly the Po River. It's interesting. Then we have traditions that it's important to save. This is the places where the young female that help in the rice fields worked in Piedmont. So their rooms. We have a lot of buildings that have been abandoned in the past, and now we can renew for this route. We have wonderful architecture of the past here in Pavia, the bridge, architecture from the rural architecture, different rural architecture, because along the Po River we have different ways to cultivate, to make the architecture, the agriculture. And then we have a great number, I think 200, 300 number of spreaded heritages. That's really, there is not an inventory of this. We know that there are 10 dozen UNESCO situations. Okay, if I well remember, we have 3 or 4 UNESCO sites along the Po River, but we have a lot of immaterial UNESCO sites, and we have 4, if I well remember, Menem and biosphere area that are very important. But even in this case, all UNESCO situations are not linked together, because they never imagined to be connected with a unique line. Okay, and we proposed them to. I spoke to the UNESCO center to propose VENTO as a link for the UNESCO sites. So the diversity of the landscape is really incredible in these marginal areas. Okay, and then the last pillar, okay, And the last pillar is to let you understand that this line, the slowness, and the power of the landscape can be an opportunity, a really very important opportunity for empower the marginal areas. As I said, the Po Valley is a place that don't matter as using the definition of pose. Is a place where the demographic growth rate is negative, is a place where we will find many abandoned buildings. There is no tourism, okay. Is the border of three regions. Is the south border of the Lombardy, is the north border of the Emilia-Romagna, is the south border of Veneto, and is far from the capital centers. So Bologna, Milano, Venezia are not interested in the Po River. So it's a perfect marginal area. And but we studying the success in the other countries, the success of these long cycling route or walking routes, we discovered that the economies of this line were strong economies. For instance, in Germany, you remember 45,000 kilometers of long cycling routes generate 9 billion per year. 9 million per billions per year, euro per year, that are spent exactly in the marginal areas. That's incredible. Okay, more than 260 million days per year spent there, and more than almost 6 million trips lasting at least 3 days. In the Netherlands, we have other important figures, more or less 1 billion per year. In France, we have 2 billions per year. But remember that in all these cases, at the beginning, there was a strong investment by the government to realize the infrastructure, to realize the lines. If you don't realize the lines, it's impossible to have these economies. These are some cases. For instance, in Austria, the famous route along the Danube River produce more than 100 million of euro per year, and there are many people cycling there, 500,000 a year cycling there. It's really an economy, a real economy, and a real opportunity for that people to appreciate the landscape of the water or the Danube River. I hope that so it's important because to highlight this concept, because if we design a line of this type, we have to realize something that a lot of people can use, not just 2,000, 3,000, 10,000, but no less than 200,000. If you want to generate economies along these territories, you have to imagine to design a line that can be used by almost 200,000 people per year. But the job is the real challenge of this. And for instance, in these statistics, you can see that in Europe, thanks to the investment made in the past in the sector of psychotourism. Now we have one job every 1,000 inhabitants. It's incredible in Germany. We have more than 2 jobs, 2.2 jobs every 1,000 inhabitants. But in Italy, we don't have jobs, okay, 0.2. And it's a pity, it's incredible, because in Italy we have food, we have landscape, we have heritage, but we don't have lines. We don't have lines. So now we are starting to realize these lines. But you can understand that it's a great opportunity to generate jobs for young people, for instance, so jobs connected with the museum, but you need the lines, okay? And the kind of jobs are several. Every time I introduce the VENTO, everybody's tell me, okay, there will be a lot of people repairing bikes or people selling objects for cyclists. It's true, but remember that when you spend 3 days far from home, surely you have 9, you eat 9 times, okay? Surely we spend a lot of money for having food, okay? You spend money for having rest, bed and breakfast and so on, but probably you can you need to repair your bike 1 time or less than 1 time. So the real economy of this is the food, is the rest, and are the cultural activities that you can do along this route. I show you surely the maintenance of the bikes, but what's important is, for instance, to help the little shops in the small villages to have new people there that can buy items there. It's really strategic for that little shops, for even to maintain the tradition of that places. For instance, the pubs, osterie, trattorie, that is small restaurants in Italy. There are a lot of trattorie, but they don't have people that decide to have food there in this moment. Osterie, street food, even street food along the Po River. There is some situation of street food that we can enforce probably with thanks to the line. And then we have a lot of abandoned buildings that will be transformed. Bed and breakfast will be transformed in a little hotel or something like that. In this moment, we have just 10, no more than 10 bed and breakfasts along the Po River. That's incredible. And so on. These are 2 young people that decided to leave the city and to found, to open an ostello. There are just 2 ostelli along the Po River. Ostello is a particular bed and breakfast with shared room among people, for young people. And it's really very, very, very beautiful. And in this moment, the economy is a good economy for them. And they are, what's important that they are very happy have done this. Okay. But if you want an Ostello, you have to think that you have to prepare the Ostello, so the architectures, the economies of the building. It's important even to renew all these buildings for hosting a new situation, for welcome people. And this building that you see there is a water museum, a little water museum in Governolo. And the agreement was between the province and the Ostello was that the province gave the opportunity to open the Ostello if the Ostello managed even the museum, the water museum. So sometimes there are conferences, there are visiting, and so on. Okay, then what's important is the economies of the agriculture, because along the line you can have a lot of farms. Along the Po River, we have 10,000 farms, and many of them can host people, can offer products. Here you see the particular fruit, melone, okay, from Mantova, and here you can see a producer of ciliegie, non mi ricordo come si dice, di ciliegie. So even the small economies of the agricultural farms along the line can be put together to offer something to the cyclotourism. And it's important to protect these little farms, okay? For instance, this is a traditional market in the villages. Typical product, this is a mostarda, is a particular marmalade made in Cremona, very good. And there are some districts, small districts that produce this. Okay. Handcraft. Handcraft is still an important economy in these places, but they don't have people that buy these objects. So, and the museum. This is an important museum along the Po River that remind us a terrible battle that was in Felonica between Americans and the German soldiers. Here, for instance, is Gualtieri. Gualtieri is the big museum of by Ligabue. He's an important painter in Italy. And here is the foundation by Cesare Zavattini, important art director and in the cinema in Italy. Or maybe you have to think that one of the most important jobs is the photographer, okay, and it's the video maker that you can imagine in the future. The guide, the tourist guide or the ecological guide. Okay, many cyclotourists are interested in visiting foodlands, ecological oases, and so on. And this is really very important. There is one center, one research center of dedicated to the water in Boretto, managed by the agency of the Po River. And they, thanks to VENTO, the line of VENTO, they are thinking to open to the public. And this is very important because people cycling there can stop and have a little lesson on the infrastructure and how the infrastructure work to manage the river. And I'm very happy of this because in the past this was a research center completely closed to the people. Maybe in the future, thanks to the idea of VENTO, it will be open. So I think that this can reach one of our goals, that is to make people learn about what happened in the environment that they pass through. Other jobs are, for instance, the boat guides, because in my opinion, you can boat from a point to another point, and to enjoy the landscape of the river in another way, not just paddling or just walking, but maybe boating. It's possible. In fact, you can rent also a little boat if you want. Then other jobs are artists that in the evening prepare events for psychotourism and so on. And then the maintenance. The business of the maintenance is very important, and many jobs can be in the future for the maintenance of all the cycle routes. I've already said, but it's important to remember that this kind of lines let us widespread the benefit along the whole line. Instead, in our mind, many times we have fixed in mind that the tourism, the business of the tourism must happen just in some cities. It's not true. For marginal areas, we need something that widespread benefits along the line, so that everybody stay there can have some benefits from the cyclotourism, not just the tour operator or some place along the line. Exactly is the approach that I said before. We have to pass from an idea of points to an idea of lines, from an idea to concentrate the business somewhere to an idea to widespread the business everywhere. So at the end, a sentence just to remember that the landscape doesn't save itself alone. Okay, we can save it, and I think that the investment lines, the investment in slow lines, and another idea of tourism can help to save the landscape, but we have to change our approach. Okay, I can stop here my lesson. I apologize for my English again, but I hope that the 4 pillars of my speech will be have been clear to everybody. But if you want to ask me something